Buts change lives. They change the world. Our language is full of buts. We use them all the time to indicate one thing which is different from another, a contrast. For example, I was going to walk clockwise around the lake, but I walked anti-clockwise instead. My hair was short, but now it is long. With these examples, long hair, it's no better than short hair, nor is clockwise better than anti-clockwise. But sometimes buts do make a difference. And in the 3 lives that we read about today, but is life-changing. It's life-giving, in fact. Why? How? You ask. But wait, I will tell you. Our reading from Matthew's Gospel contains 3 stories. 3 stories about people who Jesus should not have been involved with. That is, if you listen to the Pharisees. The Pharisees were committed to the strict observance of a wide range of Jewish law and rituals. Law and rituals that meant that they would have avoided our 3 characters. Matthew, well, he should have been despised because he was a tax collector, but Jesus called him. The synagogue leader, well, he should have been ignored because he had spent time with his daughter's dead body. She was unclean, but Jesus restored her to life. And the hemorrhaging woman, well, she also should have been ignored because she also was unclean, but Jesus healed her. These things shouldn't have happened, but they did. Jesus' ministry was not what was expected by the Jewish leaders. And as the passage tells us, his ministry was about mercy and not sacrifice. His ministry was for all, and it changed lives. It changed the lives of these 3 people, and it can change yours. How? Well, I'm pleased you asked that question. So let me lead you through this passage to see if we can shed some light on this. And because this passage is a story, why don't we retell it from your point of view as you think about what it might have been like to have been with our 3 characters? So, you've been in the city all day in Capernaum. You're tired and you decide to go home. The road past the tax booth, it's the shortest route, so you decide to walk that way. And if you don't get distracted, it'll take you about half an hour. But as you walk past the booth, you notice a man who walks straight up to it, and without hesitation, he briefly says to the person inside, "Follow me." He then turns around to walk back the way he came, and the tax collector from inside the booth, well, he does indeed follow him. How odd. How can this stranger want the tax man to follow him? What's going on there, you think to yourself? So tax collectors, they're generally not terribly popular people. They collect money for the Romans, and they often collect more than they should, and some are dishonest. But you're intrigued, especially as this tax collector, he seems quite happy about what's going on. So you follow them to a house, to the tax collector's house, a very big house, funnily enough. And it seems that this tax collector, he's called Matthew. And you know that because he's invited a bunch of his work colleagues around, and that's what they call him. And you are swept up in the crowd and you're pushed inside to join a party that seems to be held in honour of this stranger. There's lots of people there. There's the people I mentioned before, Matthew's tax collecting colleagues. There's people you know, and there's people you don't know. There's all sorts. There's even a few prostitutes. And there are some other people of shady character, some dishonest and some quite scandalous people. But when you look at it, it's actually pretty representative of the group of people who live in Capernaum. Except there's not a Pharisee or a religious leader in sight. Should you be concerned? No, well, it's all the better to enjoy the feast, as the Pharisee's not around to criticise you and to say that you are not keeping all their rules and their regulations. So it's a great party, But what do you know? Later on, you hear that the Pharisees, well, they did know about Matthew's party, and apparently they had grilled the stranger's followers, the disciples they're known as. They say that this stranger, he's supposed to be a teacher, a rabbi, so why is he associating with such a rabble? This fellow, as we find out his name is Jesus, he responds with the following words: "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." Well, what a dressing down that is. I think he's referring to that verse from Hosea, isn't he? The verse from Hosea, "For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." This Jesus character, he has been healing people who are physically sick and those who are oppressed by demons. And now he's saying that he is calling, or saving in another way of saying it, he's saving sinners. Aren't these the people that the Pharisees are ignoring? The ones who aren't pious or obedient enough? The ones who aren't obeying all these laws and regulations? The ones who need spiritual healing? These are the ones, they're just like Matthew, and well, quite frankly, they're like everyone. Jesus seems to be saying that he wants the Pharisees to care for these people too, not just to care about their own laws and their own rituals. What he is saying is that he has come to call not the righteous, but sinners. So now Matthew, a tax collector, a sinner, has been asked to follow Jesus, to leave his old life behind and join Jesus in his ministry. Just by the simple action of Jesus calling him, calling out, "Follow me," Matthew now has a new life. His trust in Jesus has saved him. Not someone who is righteous, but a sinner. Jesus has changed everything. This but has changed Matthew's life. This tax collector is now a committed follower of Jesus. So Matthew's response to Jesus' call is the right response, and he follows him without hesitation, and he leaves his previous life behind. Now, this may have been challenging for Matthew. He had a large house, we think. More than likely he was well off, and if he changed his mind, it was unlikely that he could return to his old tax collecting job. After all, who was going to employ a former tax collector, given their reputation for corruption and association with Roman authorities? But wait, there's more. A bit later in the day, Jesus is talking about weddings and cloth and wineskins. You can't quite make it out. But just as you are subtly trying to edge closer to hear better, another man bursts on the scene. And you know this man. His name is Jairus, and he's a lay leader at the synagogue. He oversees worship there. Jairus now approaches Jesus, or he rather throws himself at him as he kneels before him and worships him. His daughter has just died, and he wants Jesus' help. As he says, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." But changes lives. Jairus knows that Jesus can heal his daughter. Jairus is a man of stature, of status, of authority, of dignity in his office. But this Jewish leader, in his grief, he enters the house where Jesus has been criticised by the Pharisees for eating with unworthy people, with tax collectors and with sinners. He has heard of this great healer, and he doesn't care about his reputation, about how it looks. He just wants his daughter healed. He will do anything. He'll even approach a prophet, a teacher who has been condemned by the Jewish leaders. But seemingly out of nowhere, you notice a woman touching the fringe of Jesus' cloak. She has quietly crept up behind him and cautiously stretched out her hand. slowly and tentatively at first, and then as she gains courage, she flexes her fingers and boldly reaches out and touches the fabric of his cloak. No buts, but an if. If only I touched his cloak, I will be made well. Or, using my translation, I am sick, but if I touch you, I will be made well. This woman has been hemorrhaging for 12 years, so although her physical ailment is difficult, it does not appear to be life-threatening. But she is unclean, and this is what her real problem is. Because she's unclean, she can't participate in normal life. She can't attend public worship, she can't go to the synagogue, she can't be touched. People cannot use the same furniture as her, they cannot sit on the same chairs, and they cannot sit or touch her bed. She's an outcast. So this, as well as her gender, would have made her hesitant in coming forward. But she does come forward. She takes courage and she boldly touches Jesus' cloak. She has faith in Jesus, and she is confident that he can heal her. And he does. Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well. You are intrigued, and so you follow Jesus as he continues on to Jairus' house. When you first heard Jairus ask Jesus to heal his daughter, you thought that he might be confused, that his daughter really wasn't dead, but she is. There is a noisy crowd at the house, complete with flute players. They are so noisy, but at least things are being done the right way, just like Jews are supposed to, and that's a huge relief. Jesus, he mustn't have understood, because he says, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, she's sleeping." She is not dead, but sleeping. Now, this makes no sense to you at all. Of course the girl's well and truly dead, never to work the earth again. The mourners should know they've turned up, they're wailing and they're making a fuss. You can't believe that Jesus would think otherwise, surely. And the crowd, well, they let him know, don't they? But to Jesus, she is not dead, she is just sleeping. Butts change lives. Jesus changes lives, and he raises her from the dead. And so, as you finally start to make your way home, you think deeply on what it means that Jesus has come to save sinners. Each of these three characters has faith in Jesus. Jesus changes everything, and their faith on him changes their lives, or faith in him changes their lives. Matthew begins a new life, not as a tax collector and a sinner, but as a committed follower of Jesus. Jairus' daughter was dead, but because of her father's confident faith, she was brought back to life. And the hemorrhaging woman, well, she was sick and she was unclean, but because of her courageous and bold faith, she was healed and made clean. For each of them, the but and the if has become a reality because Jesus changes everything and because they have faith in him. Faith in Jesus is what links these three people. When questioned by the Pharisees, Jesus said that he came to heal the sick and to save sinners, and that is exactly what he has done for these three people. We might think that being sick or being a sinner, it's two different problems, but it is clear from Jesus' ministry that these are different aspects of his redemptive work on earth. Jesus died to pay the penalty for our sin and to bear the Father's wrath, the punishment that we should bear ourselves. What this means is that we are reconciled to the Father in a way that one day we will be fully restored as we were created to be. And this restoration is physical, it's spiritual, it's relational. For now, through Jesus' death and resurrection, we await the coming of the kingdom, and as we do, we wait in hope as we are being transformed into the likeness of Christ. But what if you aren't yet a believer? What sort of things might be stopping the buts being turned into reality? Perhaps you might think that you're not good enough for Jesus to love you. Or maybe you think it's just all too hard to change your life. Or maybe you just don't have the courage to touch him like the hemorrhaging woman did. If that's you, please come and talk to myself or Richard. We'd love to help you. We'd love to help you to see how faith in Jesus can really change your life. But if you already believe, well, what then? As you wait for Jesus to return, it's easy to think that there are no buts in our life. Buts are a possibility if we have faith. But buts can also be excuses. They can be obstacles not to trust the one that we have faith in. So, for example, I really, really want God to love me, but there's no way that Jesus can possibly love me. Or, I pray, but Jesus, he can't possibly be interested in me or what I have to pray about. Or, I really, really love Jesus, but sometimes I just have doubts about him. But this is the thing. All Matthew had to do was follow Jesus when he called him. All Jairus had to do was believe that Jesus could raise his daughter from the dead. All the hemorrhaging woman had to do was believe that Jesus could heal her. Jesus had already done the work. He's the one that changes everything. He's the one who saves, not us. We can't. The word all makes it sound so easy, doesn't it? Jesus is the one who changes everything, so we just need to have faith in him. That's all it takes, all it takes. So how do we do that? Well, a few thoughts. Firstly, we can read the Bible. It's always a wonderful thing to do. And as we read the Bible, we can learn how God is redeeming our world through Jesus Christ, his Son. We can also do it through prayer, by asking the Holy Spirit to guide and to strengthen us. We can come to church like today to worship together and to support each other and encourage each other when these buts get in our way. And we can also use stories like the story this morning. The Bible is full of stories. If you believe Wikipedia, it's about 60 to 70% story. It's full of people like you and like me. Some find faith easy, some find it hard, and there's the whole range in between. People like Ruth, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Dorcas, Sarah, Abraham, Moses, Peter, David, Paul. There are so many. The list is huge. Putting ourselves in the story of the Bible, like today, helps us to reflect on how it might be for us, how we might face challenges, and how we might rejoice as God reveals what he has done in his Son Jesus and in the lives of so many before us and continues to do in our own. And it shows us how Jesus can change our lives forever and ever and ever. Amen.